evening. All right, good evening. Seeing as it is 6:30, we'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Rembrandt, can we have a roll call, please? Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Thank you. We'll now stand, and Ms. Boland will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now have a moment of silence. Please keep the following individuals who have passed away in your thoughts and prayers. Salvatore Raffa, retired plant engineer and father of Elizabeth Raffa, MTSS coordinator at TMS. Sidney Williams, retired teacher and assistant superintendent, Newport Public Schools. David Boani, retired custodian. Lillian Chalmers, mother of Trish Chalmers, Rogers High School teacher. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is our student council update, and this year we're happy to have Megan Meridew with us, who will report on the monthly activities of Rogers High School Student Council and its student body. So, Meg, go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. School is back in full swing, and it's a mainly normal year. We do still have to wear the masks, but if it means that we're in school, then that's a great thing. Our sports teams are up and running with great participation from every class of the school. Student council is getting started this week with a meeting on Friday. Our main focus for this month is to hold an info night on September 30th for the sports and clubs at Rogers High School, so that families and students can get information about what Rogers has to offer. And seniors did their parking spots. They painted their parking spots. And we would like to thank Angela Johnson for giving up her Saturday to be there supervising us. So overall, it's been a great start to the year, and I just hope that it gets better and better. Thank you.
Thanks, Meg. Are there any questions for Meg from the school committee? Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Meg. So the next item is public comment. Mr. Rembrandt, do we have anybody signed up at this time for public comment? Thank you. So that leads us into the action items. First action item is 4.1. It's a request for approval on the second reading of policy 5226, masks, face covering, second reading. Is there a motion to approve the policy on the second reading as presented this evening? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Boatright. I believe, as we get into it, I believe the superintendent has a recommendation for a language change that they've developed in the administration. So, Dr. Germain?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gomes. The administration is requesting at this time that the last line be changed from Newport Public Schools is strongly recommending students and staff be vaccinated by October 1st, 2021, or they shall be tested on a weekly basis, to Newport Public Schools is requiring all eligible staff be vaccinated by Wednesday, October 13th, 2021, or staff present proof of a negative PCR test weekly beginning October 30th and every Wednesday thereafter until further notice. Newport Public Schools is strongly recommending all students eligible be vaccinated by October 13th, 2021, with parent permission, may be tested on a weekly basis until further notice. Newport Public Schools will make available COVID testing when possible for students with parent permission once staff have been trained and appropriate supports are in place.
Doctor, just one just for clarity, I believe you said October 31st also in the second October, they're all supposed to be October 13th.
Everything's supposed to be October 13th, 2021,
Okay,
to
just
make
wanted
it
to check
easy,
because you,
to make it easier for everyone to remember, yes, and to give people enough time.
is there a motion to accept the recommendation as made? Mrs. Boland, seconded by Ms. Winslow. Any discussion on the amendment to the policy as recommended?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Leary?
first of all, let's clear one thing up. Is this the second reading or third reading?
This is the second reading of the policy.
And Mr. Galvin, could you clear up what,
My understanding is that this would be the third time that it's on the agenda for
Correct.
discussion. So, either way, and I've been notified that the policy on adopting of policies was amended to, instead of 3 readings, that it'd be 2 readings.
correct.
But in any event, happens to be the third time.
So, does that make a difference right now? Because we've already had 2 readings. We have to do something different? Because
I
it
don't
was
think it
approved
was-
last time.
But it wasn't approved the first time, so you still need a second reading anyway with approval.
Okay.
You've only
Just-
had one approval today.
So, a month ago, it was not approved,
Correct,
and it was approved last month
correct.
for the first reading.
So you
It's the
still
third
need a
time we've
second,
seen it.
you still need a second approval.
Right, so I don't wanna, I wanna thank Mrs. Boland, because I remember this very clearly, that we went to 2 readings. And we mentioned at the meeting, and if everybody wants to go to tape, it was 3 readings, and I'm saying, no, we changed it to 2 readings.
This is the third time it's been on the agenda, but you've only had one approval, so you need a second approval.
Right, but we don't need 3 times to approve anything, only 2.
You
Anything,
need 2 approvals.
right, thank you.
Ms. Boland?
I just wanted to say that the reason that happened was an oversight in between when it was before Colleen, and it actually happened on April 11th, 2012, and it was just an oversight and didn't get put into the policy. It actually was approved by the school committee, but didn't actually get moved into the policy online. So that's how it happened. But with some investigating, we were able to find it.
Any other comments on the amendment to the policy as read?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Leary?
So, Mrs. Boland, what do you suggest we do to clear this up? Because evidently we make changes to policies and go from 3 to 2, and nobody knows about it, and then, so is there a way we can check this going forward?
One way to do it is to go through board docs and just, hit the policy button and go back and check check them just to make sure they got included, especially if it was before our current secretary, was, in charge. I mean, this could have happened in some places, but this is the first time we found it.
Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Flowers?
All right, when this was first brought up, remember we were getting the, word that a policy had to be put together regarding the mask wearing, all of these issues. The policy subcommittee had worked on it, we brought it before the school committee, there was a considerable discussion. I could find the date, but I don't have the date in my head right now, that can be found. Rather, there was I think there was a motion to take it on the first reading, but then there was so much discussion and real legitimate concern about what was written. I believe the motion for the first reading was withdrawn, and that was more of an informational setup, and the policy subcommittee was directed to go back and work some more on it. So the first time the entire school committee had input on this, it was informational, I think we'll call it that. It was informational. Then, policy subcommittee, we worked on it and did all of that work. The last time we met was really technically the first reading of this proposed policy. Tonight is the second reading. The idea of having two readings is it's been in effect for many, many years. We've not had, three readings since, I think maybe my first or second term on. So, there seemed to be, some confusion with that. I can understand why it would be. But the first time that the entire school committee saw this sitting here as a body was, it was not so much tabled, but again, the policy, subcommittee was directed to go back and revisit it. I hope that makes it a little clearer.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion on the amendment to the policy?
Mr. Chair, I just want to be very clear for staff and that staff be vaccinated by Wednesday, October 13th, 2021, or staff shall present proof of negative PCR test weekly, beginning October 13th.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussions? Seeing none, Mr. Embrance, will you do a roll call vote on the amendment to the policy 5226? Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
All right, so now there's, the policy has been amended. That amendment has been voted on and approved. Is there any discussion on the policy 5226 as amended and before you for a second reading this evening? Is there any public comment or anybody who would like to speak on the amended policy before we vote? Not seeing any. Mr. Rembrandts, could you do a roll call vote to approve policy 5226 on the second reading as amended this evening? Aye.
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 Nay. Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Thank you. It was 5-2, correct? Thank you. That policy is approved as presented. Next action item is 4.2. It's a request for approval of the contract between Newport Public Schools and Gaggle Inc. I believe Director Young recommends approval of the contract with Gaggle Inc. as presented. The contract is for software monitoring system in the amount of $7,875, and it will be funded locally. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented this evening?
So moved.
Mr. Dring, seconded by Ms. Boatright. And Mr. Young, if you want to give us a little overview.
Yes, good evening, thank you. So, I brought with me Jody Lott, who's our Gaggle representative, so she's here to help out if there's any questions I can't answer. But basically, this is a software system that will help kind of monitor Google Suite traffic. So, if a student is talking about something negative, maybe some bullying, harassing, anything, mental health issues, it'll pick that up, and depending on the level of severity, it'll go up to the building administrator, and then if it's, it could be something as simple as an email to have a conversation the next day with the student, or if it's severe enough, it can trigger phone calls down the phone tree, and depending on, again, the severity of that phone tree could go all the way to emergency services if needed.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the school committee? Ms. Boland?
Are the students aware of that they're gonna be monitored? Or is that not?
They will, but
You will tell them?
yes, yeah, I'll definitely have that conversation, but we haven't gone there yet without coming through here.
How is that provided? In other words, if they log on, does something come on the screen to tell them that they're being monitored, or is it something they'll have to learn from an announcement?
It'll be from an announcement.
Any other questions from the school committee?
Mr.
Ms. Winslow, go right ahead.
So this would be new in Newport, but it's already used in a couple other school districts, I think, locally?
Yeah, South Kingstown, Cumberland, a bunch in Connecticut. Yes, actually, South Kingstown it got put to the level where it was a weekend, and emergency services had to react, and it actually prevented something from happening.
Thank you. Any other questions from the school committee? Not seeing any, Mr. Unbrandts, could you do a roll call vote to approve the contract between Newport Public Schools and GAG Inc.? Aye.
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 Abstaining.
Aye.
So that vote is six votes a yay and one abstention. Correct? Thank you. Next item is 4.3. It's request for approval to purchase and install cameras at Pell Elementary School. Director Young recommends approval of the camera system at Pell Elementary School as presented. Custom computer specialist will complete the scope of work if approved at a cost of $17,791.89 through the capital fund. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented this evening? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Boatright. Mr. Young, if you want to give us a...
Yeah, this is, in my opinion, it's a definite need. Our cameras here are antiquated. They're not working. We've spent a lot of time repairing them, the server itself, changing it out, putting a new one in. So, it's time to update the cameras here at the school.
Ms. Boland?
So are we sure that this, whatever you've chosen is gonna integrate well with the new, it's gonna be like an easy integration? with
Yes,
the new building?
the new building, yep, yes, for sure. And training, the administrators will be trained on, and the facility engineer as well.
Mr. Drink?
And how long is a guarantee that it's going to work? Because camera systems do tend to fail quite quickly, or need to be upgraded.
That I don't know. I can find out from Customs is our group. It's our local vendor that helps with all of our infrastructure. I can get that and get back to you on the guarantee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Winslow?
I know you're redesigning the entryway, or thinking about it. There's plans now for the new entryway, the Welcome Center, so I would imagine there's a lot of camera security at the main entrance to the building. Is that incorporated into this cost, or, how's that gonna work?
Not this cost is for the building as it is now and the addition, not to the Welcome Center, but they know that there's a possibility that that'll go in, so it'll be roughed so that it'll just be an easy addition.
Do you know the cost on that addition?
Not
Or
at
is
this
that
time.
part of the school building project? Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Young?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if
Mr.
you could for
Leary.
the press explain the cost of this and where's the funding coming from?
So we'll be requesting that it comes from Capital Improvement Fund.
And the cost?
$17,791.89.
Yeah, 17,705. Yes. So
Thank you.
need a bigger font.
I just have one quick comment.
Mr. Drink?
I was going to say that I think the $17,000 investment is probably going to save us a lot of money in vandalism and damage in the long run. So I think it needs to be done.
Any other questions or discussions? Ms. Boland?
Is that tied in with the police department, Bill, or is it just, and do we have, are these recorded sessions that we have on there?
They're recorded, yes.
So we
and
can look at it the next day?
Yes, yeah.
Do
And
any of them go directly to the police station?
not directly, but they'll be able to access the server.
Any Any other questions, discussions? Seeing none, Mr. Rembrandt, could you do a vote, roll call vote to approve the request for the installation of cameras at Pell Elementary School? Aye.
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 Abstaining.
Aye.
Thank you. So six affirmative votes and 1 abstention. Thank you. 4.4 is a request for approval to remove and replace fencing at Thompson Middle School. Director Young recommends approval of fence replacement at Thompson Middle School as presented. Sole Source Construction, master price agreement number 498 would complete the project if approved at a cost of $11,800, funded through the maintenance budget. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented? Ms. Boland, seconded by Ms. Winslow. Mr. Young, if you could give us a...
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the dumpster fence area behind Thompson, but this is desperately needed. There are students outside daily at recess playing around, and the fence is falling apart, to put it nicely. So definitely needs to be replaced. It's an eyesore, and it could be dangerous for the children.
Where exactly is the fence?
This is the fence around the dumpster area. So it blocks off the dumpsters in the back of the school.
And Ms. Bobrick, go right ahead.
Is there any plan at all to replace the paving area, that's the playground area as well? Is that coming
Yes.
up at some point?
So that started, and then it stalled, and then we're reinitiating that conversation for that, definitely.
Great,
Yep.
thank you.
Ms. Boland.
So should putting the new fencing in wait, because are you gonna have to
No.
repave what's underneath it?
This is, it's fine with this
It's
new
gonna be
fencing,
okay,
yeah.
you
Yep.
can integrate.
We've talked to them about that, yep.
Alright.
I believe when I went up there to look at this, I believe the area under the dumpster is a concrete pad.
It's a slab.
And the slab, and then the pavement is independent of the dumpster area. So it wouldn't affect it. Any other questions or discussion? Not seeing any, Mr. Rembrandt, could you do a roll call vote to approve the request to remove and replace fencing at Thompson Middle School? Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Motion is six ayes, 1 abstention. 4.5 is request for acceptance of Coastal Extreme Brewing Company grant. It's a request to accept grant in the amount of $1,250 from Coastal Extreme Brewing Company to support the Thompson Proud program. And is there a motion to approve the request as presented this evening? Ms. Boland, seconded by Ms. Winslow, and Director Ashley is here to give us an overview of it.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. It's my pleasure to present before the committee a grant from Coastal Extreme Brewing Company in the amount of $1,250 for Thompson Middle School's Proud, or People Respecting Others with Dignity program. Ms. Clark runs this program, an inclusive-based school safety, really school-wide program to support students. And in particular, this grant will provide art supplies for their projects and registration for a conference they plan on attending.
And for the general public, the man sitting in front of you right now is the new Director of Teaching and Learning, Mr. Christopher Ashley. This is his first public appearance with us.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you.
Any questions for Director Ashley?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Leary,
was there a motion in a second, sir?
there is a motion
thank
and a
you.
second to approve.
Thank you. So first, let me take this opportunity to say why I've been abstaining. I've had some serious eye operations a few months back, and lost a lot of my vision. I've been having trouble with screens, so I've been asking for hard copies. I did not receive them this month, so I'm not comfortable voting on some things I didn't beat out. But that being said, I'm comfortable in voting no on this. The reason I'm voting no on this is for 20 years, I sat on St. Mary's Financial Council. And every year, we'd have all the stocks and investments, St. Mary's Church in Newport would come in, and they would go through all the investments they had. And at some of these times, some of the investments we made some serious money were not in conducive with religious practices. So we said, cut it. So we lost money on investments, and we're not lost it with the other religion. So I'm not comfortable with this brewing company giving us money when we're a school, when we shouldn't be doing things with alcohol, drugs, or cigarettes, period.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Director Ashley? Ms. Boland?
I will say it's incredibly generous of, community, business to do this for us, and, so I will be voting for it tonight.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Dr. Flowers?
This brewing company, of course, we know what they brew, but it doesn't look to me as though the purpose of the grant monies would go into that direction, and looking at what the focus is going to be. And I think, projects that work on anti-bullying and, social emotional help for our young people is commendable. Keeping in mind that the source of this company's income is legal. So, I don't see that they are promoting any, negative behaviors on the part of our young people.
Thank you. Ms. Boatright?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, say again, I think that community.
A little closer.
I want to say, I want to thank community members who do support the Newport Public Schools in both grant funding as well as donations of time and effort. So I just want to make a thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussion, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Rembrandt, could you do a roll call vote to approve the grant from Coastal Extreme Brewing Company? Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
6-1. Motion's approved. Thank you, Director Ashley.
Thank you.
Next item is 4.6. It's request for approval for 2 district translators utilizing ESSER funding. Dr. Ronnie Lee Mooney requests approval for 2 translators for the district using ESSER funds. The total budget is approximately $75,000. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented? Ms. Winslow, seconded by Dr. Flowers. And Dr. Mooney, if you want to give us a little overview of the request.
Sure. So for the last few years, our influx of Spanish-speaking families in our district has really increased. And we started with 2 times a week for a translator, and she would visit each school. But with the influx of those families, they also service 504 meetings, IEP meetings, parent-teacher meetings, students that are in crisis in the schools, calling families on a daily basis, especially with COVID, checking in with attendance, behavior problems. They are just vitally important to each building and for the administration as well, that can have a barrier to communicate with families and students.
And just a quick question, the translators would be throughout the district on an as-needed basis?
Yes, so we had to increase their number of days in each building because of the demand. So we're just keeping that as more Ls and Spanish-speaking families enroll.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Boland?
Will that mean that we will have a full-time translator at each school during the
We've
school
had
year?
one, this will be, I believe, the second full year that they are full-time.
Okay, one thing I didn't see in their, the list of what you're gonna have them do, is it possible for them to help make those phone calls? Because I know I'm speaking to an administrator over
They do.
at Rogers, so they can contact every day?
Oh, every
person
single
that
day
doesn't
they are
show
on the
up?
phones, yes.
Okay,
They have their own direct line at each school.
Okay, that's good.
They were really the lifeline for COVID, for administration, absolutely.
Ms. Boatright?
I just have a question. I know and I believe that they are needed, but is it also mandated by RIDE or the state in any way? Just curious.
It's not mandated, but it is for an IEP meeting that they are offered a translator of their language, their first language.
Thank you.
And Ms. Winslow?
I was just curious, I'm kind of assuming this will be a long-term need.
Yes.
So next year and the year after, et cetera, are we gonna have to add this into our operating budget as another position? I mean, when the ESSER funding runs out, this is gonna be coming from our city budget.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Leary?
could you explain that? I mean, you're just gonna use ESSER funds next year?
Was that to me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, whoever wants to answer it.
Yes. We're using ESSER funds for next year.
So you're not supposed to use ESSER funds, where's our business manager? We'll get rid of that question. ESSER funds should not be used for ongoing things like that without creating new positions.
Well, in his defense, I have been able to fund it for my immigrant assistance grant, but we were not eligible this year. So with the ESSER funding, we were able to support this.
So it's a year-to-year thing. So next year we could say, we don't have no ESSER funds and no thing, we can cut it.
Highly doubted, and hopefully maybe I get that grant back or use other funding that I'm allocated from the state.
Okay. Because I'm going to stress that every time I have a business, talking here. You need to make sure you do not use ESSER funds for ongoing expenses, because it creates a structural deficit, and Mrs. Boland knows very well, you know?
Thank you.
Mr. Dren?
Why did you not get the grant this year?
We did not have as many immigrant children enroll. I believe it's maybe because of the border at the time, the COVID restrictions. We had the same amount of Ls, but just not the high enrollment early on, whereas that has already surpassed our numbers.
So you only qualify for new
Correct.
students that come in?
Correct. And students are only qualified as immigrant for 3 years.
And how many new families do you have this year?
I mean, if I think right off the top of my head, at least 60.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's not including kindergarten either. That's just a whole nother wave.
Ms. Winslow?
I just want to comment, I think this is an example of why the support from the city for our ongoing staffing needs is so vital.
Thank you. And Ms. Boland?
So I know that, we may be or already have received students from the Middle East. Are we gonna reach out and find translators for them?
Good question. So we have connections with the War College, and we have a lot of military wives that have offered to help, and we have a few contacts already if need be, so we would use them as well.
Make their transition easier.
Exactly.
Any other questions or comments?
I do.
Mr. Dren?
I'm gonna vote in favor because I know we need it, but I know Mr. Leary's right, and this is a concern down the road.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Not seeing or hearing any. Mr. Rembrandt, could you do a roll call vote to approve the request for 2 translators utilizing ESSER funding? Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mooney. Next action item is 4.7. It's a request for approval for student engagement facilitators, a total of 3 of them utilizing ESSA funding. Director Andrade requests approval to fund a student engagement facilitator for each school utilizing ESSA funds. Salary and benefits for the 3 positions is approximately $255,000. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Winslow. Director Andrade, if you want to give us a little overview, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm just speaking on behalf of all of the principals because I know that they all feel
Excuse me,
the
Director,
need-
could you just get a little...
I not?
No problem,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry. I usually don't have that problem with my voice. I can say that I'm speaking on behalf of all of the principals today, just requesting these student engagement facilitators to assist our families and our students to help get them back in school, back engaged in our school community. I provided some information, some data from Kids Count on the number of our students who continue to be either significantly or chronically absent from school. Our hope is that the student engagement facilitators can make closer connections with families and students, go out and do home visits, spend time with our district or school-based administrators and MTSS teams to review data, identify those students most in need of connection, and to help go to their houses and find out why aren't you coming and what can we do to help them to come to school. At this point, we have almost 50% of our students who are falling into that significant or chronic absenteeism category. We can't teach them if they're not here. So it's a priority, absolutely. And along with our MTSS coordinators, our special service coordinator for the high school, purchasing vans to help bring them into school. You know, it's a complete wraparound process that we're looking at to getting kids back in school and re-engaged.
Thank you. Ms. Boland?
The 255,000 are you hoping that this is gonna be a college educated, I mean, it's a pretty good salary. It works out to 85,000 including benefits. So, and is it gonna be part of TAN, or is it gonna be part of Council 94, or is it gonna be through a private agency? I mean, how are you gonna hire these people?
We're looking now as a supportive administrative role because the school day doesn't really conform. If
Right.
we need them to go out to a house before or after school or connect with families,
Okay.
it's not, and weekends, like it may not necessarily conform to the C94 or TAN hours. So, you know, it needs to be a little bit more independent than that.
That makes sense. All right.
Ms. Boatright?
And I just want to ask, because absenteeism is a huge issue here, and we all know that, you know, and so I'm hoping that we can get feedback from you in a reporting way, either, if not monthly, quarterly at a minimum, but every couple of months anyhow, on sort of, you know, what is happening, you know, and, you know, why is it happening, and what are some of the things that can be done both within the school system or from our standpoint to help out. Thank you.
Ms. Winslow?
I second that strongly.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Leary?
this may not be the appropriate time, but Mr. Chairman, we using Aspen this year. We didn't use it last year except for like 2 months and 3 months for tracking student attendance.
The answer is we still use Aspen as our SIS. No, we do not use it as far as reporting out absences or anything. That's more.
How are we going to report this out this year?
It is collected through Aspen, but it is not a tool that is conducive to showing us exactly what the problem is, and that is why we are going to alternative methods such as these facilitators, engagement facilitators, as well as working with Fab Lab, Newport, and others to help go out to the community more. So we're going to create another, I'll say, template that will show attendance and also help us to be able to track improvement.
So last year, we got it for like 2 months. You can see it through our emails. We
Can
never,
you just pull that?
yeah, sorry. Last year, we seen it for a few months. We never saw it. We never knew what was going on. So I never knew the totals. And I've asked, could you get us the totals of absentees and tardy for last year?
I think
This
she
may not be the
provided that.
appropriate
You
time.
gave
We can
us
pull
reports.
that out, but again, I'm going to stress it is incidents and not necessarily students.
I
That is
understand.
what the confusion is.
But-
Okay.
And you mentioned, if you go back to the tapes, you mentioned possibly the state was going to come up with something last year. And then
Correct, and they did not.
Correct. So I want to have, at least have some way of tracking this year,
Mm-hmm.
and we know as a board of directors.
Okay, yes.
Any other questions or comments? Dr. Flowers?
Well, looking at the description here, how the connection with the COVID effects on the school attendance, whether it was distance or in person, and with the ESSER monies, this seems quite appropriate. The question will be, is this going to be for ongoing expenses, which you really don't know. First of all, I have confidence in our administrative people, that when it comes to be looking for monies, looking for grants for important positions and important materials, thank you. I have every confidence that they will certainly put their efforts into that. We have to get our young people back into school and get them up to where they're supposed to be. And it looks to me as though this is an excellent investment in those efforts. It will be nice if down the road we don't need to have that many people really running after and trying to figure out where the kids are. But I think in the interim, this is an investment in improving the connection between the students and the trusted adults, and also communicating to the families the importance of education. That's one of our main goals.
Thank you, Ms. Winslow.
You haven't hired these 3 people yet, obviously, but do you have an idea of where you're gonna source this from? The community or agency or something else?
My preference would be not an agency, but someone from the community, who knows our families and where they live and some of their struggles. Because one of the things that we really want to ensure is that they can make those connections with families and students, and then connect them with the resources that they might need to improve their access to our educational system.
Mr. Dring?
How did you come up with a number 3, that we need 3 people to do this?
One for each school. Mr.
Eddie's-
Merritt is amazing. He knows this community probably better than anybody in this room. But he is one person. And when he tries to engage with students across the entire district, he does a phenomenal job with those he can connect with. But he is pulled to truancy court and family court, and so he's pulled away very often doing residency checks. Like, his job doesn't allow for the types of intimate connections that we're looking to make between our student engagement facilitators and families to help get them back to school.
I mean, obviously, absenteeism is probably one of the biggest issues we have in school, so I mean, I know that he needs help, but my concern is the $255,000 getting added to next year's budget. But I will support this, though, because I know that we need it, especially now, coming out of COVID. I know my kids are having issues going to school. I'm sure a lot of other kids are having the same issues that I am. I'm literally like carrying my daughter into the car a couple mornings, because it's tough.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Ms. Winslow?
Do we think 3 is enough?
You know, I mean, if we didn't have an actual budget that we were trying to remain within, it would be great to have more, but, you know, I think there's also a fiduciary responsibility on our behalf that we need to pay attention to and, ensure that we're doing what's good for students, but also what's good for taxpayers, so.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Mr. Rembrandt, could you do a roll call vote to approve the request for 3 student engagement facilitators utilizing ESSER funds? Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
6-2 approved, thank you. 1 abstention. Next action item is 4.8. It's a request for approval of contracts between Newport Public Schools and Perkins School for the Blind. Director Andrade requests approval for 2 contracts with Perkins School for the Blind to comply with student IEPs. The contracts will be locally funded. Is there a motion to approve the contracts as presented? Mrs. Boland, seconded by Dr. Flowers. Director Andrade, if you could give us a...
It's services for students who require, orientation and mobility, or services from a teacher of the visually impaired.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Andrade on the request for the contracts for the Perkins School for the Blind? Ms. Boatright.
Just want to bring up, we've done this before the last couple of years, so it's the same thing, or is it now more people?
It's an additional
It's an
student.
additional person now, so.
Yes.
Okay, so 2, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for Director Andrade? Comments, concerns? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Rembrandt, could you do a roll call vote to approve the request for the contract with Newport Public Schools and Perkins School for the Blind? Aye.
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 7-0 to approve. Thank you. Thank you, Director Andrade.
Thank you very much.
4.9 is a request for approval for Rogers High School to implement distance learning on December 20th, 2021. Principal Vance is proposing a distance learning day at Rogers High School on Monday, December 20th, 2021, in order to host the Rogers High School Science and Engineering Fair at Innovate Newport. A community exhibition and award ceremony is also proposed for the evening of December 20th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented this evening? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Boatright. Principal Vance, if you want to give us I know it speaks for itself, but anything you want to add?
Yeah, it really does kind of speak for itself. Our science department took it upon themselves to reach out to community partners to try and do our science and engineering fair a little bit differently. We typically hold it at the high school, down by the auditorium and whatnot, but this was just a nice opportunity to pair with Innovate Newport to get our kids out into the community, but then also to be able to bring in more folks from the community to see, the amazing stuff that our kids do, that they do on a daily basis. And so with that, allowing for the fact that we have almost 200 students that will be participating in the fair, that's nearly 1/3 of the population of students, plus teachers and whatnot that will be doing some of the judging. It'd be really hard to do that if we ran a traditional school day. So being able to provide synchronous and asynchronous learning during that school day allows us to participate in Innovate Newport with all of those kids and faculty, as well as still continue to educate our kids that are at home.
Thank you.
Yes, and we want the kids also to participate with going to the fair, the underclassmen.
Any questions, comments, or concerns for Mr. Vance? Mr. Leary?
Oh,
Sorry, you were leaning forward. I thought
Yeah, that's fine, yeah, I was waiting, somebody else had a hand raised.
Ms. Boland?
Do all of our students this year, are they gonna get assigned a device, you know,
Computer?
Computer, right, but they're not,
Yes.
they are, and are we in the process of doing did you collect them at the end of the year last year?
So we cataloged Chromebooks by crew teacher, and so they were stored there. And so right now we're in the process of redistributing. Yep.
Miss Winslow.
I was wondering if you could tell us more about what a distance learning day would encompass for, you know, the 500 kids who are not going to be participating in the science fair. I think I'm concerned because there's just been so much missed in-person time recently, and I think obviously distance learning is here to stay. It's something that I thought would be here earlier, but and I know we can use it as a good tool. I just want to make sure we're using it as a tool and not an excuse just not to hire subs or to make something else easier, because 2/3 of the kids are not going to participate in that science fair, and are they just going to sit home alone?
So what we're hoping is for some of those students to actually be able to come and visit and view the displays, so they can actually see, our freshmen and our sophomores, be able to see what's coming down the road. What's the level of rigor? What's the level of expectation for a junior science student? So we're looking to have kids participate as witnesses. But for the kids that are home that maybe do not go to Innovate Newport, so the distance learning is either going to be asynchronous or synchronous. So if it's asynchronous, those are going to be the teachers that would be at that time judging the science fair, and so they would be providing materials and information for students to kind of work on independently. But if staff is not participating as a judge or going in to witness the science fair, they would be providing asynchronous learning. So it would be more of that live instruction via the internet.
So, would there be maybe transportation for the kids who want to go and see?
Yeah, so we're working on transportation right now. That is our largest hurdle out of all of this, is trying to figure out how do we get the students that are doing the displays to Innovate Newport, but then as well as the kids that would like to come and view the displays, how do we get them there and home as well? You know, so we're looking at partnering with our bus company, or potentially using some of the vans that we have on campus to get kids to and from Innovate Newport, or some of our community partners. True.
I just have a question. Yeah.
Mr. Dring?
It would seem logistically it would make more sense to have it at Rogers. What is the logic behind having it at Innovate Newport and having to go back and forth and shuttle kids there?
It's honestly, it's a nice partnership that we have not taken advantage of in the past, to be able to use that facility for any kind of function. And so this was just a nice way because not all of our judges actually live in the city. Some come from universities that are off of the island, and so to come, to go right off the bridge and right down to that location is much more convenient for a large number of our judges. So it was the partnership and the experience of doing something outside of Rogers, right? So now our students have to show that they are model citizens now in the community at these events versus just at Rogers High School. So it just kind of extends that experience as well.
Ms. Boatright?
So I guess I was going to say that it leverages some of the benefits that we might have gotten from COVID to allow this kind of thing. It wouldn't have been something we would have considered in the past. I do think it's very important. I was going to ask the same question about transportation to try to get as many students in there as possible, because it is a learning experience too for them to see Innovate Newport and the different displays. But I hope that the transportation can be worked out so the vast majority of those not participating can also get there.
Definitely, that's the plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Leary?
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Boland and Ms. Winslow. That was my questions with transportation and computers. If you can answer Mrs. Boland's question again, I might have missed it. Is every student has a computer?
We're in the process of distributing right now.
Did you collect them all last year at the end of the year?
So they were cataloged and they remained in classrooms over the summertime, and then we're redistributing those to kids right now.
So they were collected and now they're going to be redistributed?
Right, so they were collected in the classroom, so they weren't pulled and they weren't stored in IT, they were stored in classrooms
Okay.
over the summertime, and those are being redistributed.
So are we gonna do an inventory of all this, Mrs. Jermaine?
I'll be honest, that is a part of our redistribution process. We are cataloging all of the devices and who they're going out to, so that we know what we have, who has them, and what do we not have, and what might be outstanding.
Each building, Mrs. Jermaine, you're gonna be doing the same thing?
Yes, we are, Mr. Leary. Director Young's been working with the IT team, and they're doing it throughout the entire district.
Thank you, because we know what happened a few years ago. There was
do-
about 50, if I'm correct, maybe Mrs. Bowen, somebody can remember, there was like 50 that didn't get turned back in about 2 years ago, maybe.
I
before-
do
before
not,
COVID.
I believe it was reported at one time, but Director Young is here as well. We did get most of them back.
2 years ago, before COVID.
Yes,
Okay. I remember hearing 50 as a number before.
right, that was reported.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments on the request for the approval of the distance learning day for December 20th, 2021? Ms. Winslow?
I just want to make a comment. I don't feel comfortable supporting it yet. I would like to see a plan that really guarantees participation by more than just a third of the students, or at least the transportation option, and maybe showing that the community partners, like Boys and Girls Club, or some of the after-school programs are there to support the kids who don't participate and are going to be distance learning on their own.
We should be able to provide that for you.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Vance? Not seeing or hearing any. Mr. Rembrandts, could you do a roll call vote to approve the request for the implementation, or to implement a distance learning day on December 20th, 2021 for Rogers High School? Aye.
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 Abstain.
Nay.
Five approvals, one nay, and one abstention. Thank you. Motion is approved. Next item is 4.10. It's a request to award independent testing lab for special inspections for the Pell Elementary School addition. Turn the page. The school building committee is requesting approval of the recommendation of Downs Construction to award the independent testing lab for special inspections for Pell Elementary addition project as FNA, I believe, engineering and testing. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented? Ms. Boatright, and seconded by Mrs. Boland. And I believe we're gonna try to utilize some of our new technology and have a remote report from Kyle.
Kyle, yes.
Kyle from Downs Construction.
Yep. He's up there on the, he's up in there on the top middle. He's on. Who's that?
Mr. Lentini is up in the corner. There you go.
But that's, the second presentation. It should be. There he is.
That's Mr. Lentini, correct. That is not Mr. Lentini. That's Mr. Rhodes.
Wrong
That's
presentation.
later.
That's Slam.
add that, so sometimes you'll see things for the Pell Project and the SLAM project come before the school committee, and that's because those are contracts that are signed between us and whoever this vendor is. And so when, sometimes the contracts are just going through, for instance, Bean Brothers, and we don't need to review them or sign them. So this one right here is something that the school department is responsible for, and it's something that has to be done, you know, that is required by state regulations, and but it still needs to go through the school committee.
Kyle's saying he can hear us. He has to speak to determine that. He hasn't said otherwise.
Testing. Nothing.
Okay.
Okay, am I up? Good to go?
Go right ahead, Kyle.
This is the wrong presentation. This should be the,
Kyle have a presentation.
he does.
He's gonna explain.
He does.
That one.
Robert, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I don't have anything to share just yet. This is the action item, and then Mark will have the presentation, but it will be shared through the board.
Can you just explain what the, this testing will do for Pell School and why we need it?
I'm not sure that he can hear us, Robert.
Kyle, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
The question is, the importance of this testing and why we need it at Pell.
So this is a requirement of the building code, and it comes from a third party outside of the contractor, so there's no conflict of interest with them installing the work. So this is mandated by the building code, and it's called the Statement of Special Inspections, which is part of the specifications of the project. So it's required by code, basically.
Ms. Boatright?
I'm just gonna say that they are, testing, their independent testing lab of the materials that we will be getting in, correct, Kyle? And we are,
Doing independent testing on the materials that we'll be getting, is that correct?
Right, they'll be testing the soils, the structural fill, the foundations, like concrete, they'll test the compressive strength. They'll do the same with the masonry, mortars, and grout. They will test and inspect the structural steel with the connections, with bolted connections and welded connections. They'll review the interior metal framing, and there's also a wind resistance testing requirement on this project. That'll be like your roof connections, wall-to-roof connections, all get inspected.
right, and the name of the firm is Independent Testing Lab, and the amount of the award, please?
Name of the firm and the amount of the award, please.
The name of the firm is FENAGH, F-E-N-A-G-H, and the proposal is for $19,600.
Right, and it's part of the, we had this in our budget for,
Is budgeted correct?
Yes, this was in the budget.
Yep.
These firms were also on the MPA for construction testing in Rhode Island, so MPA 507.
perfect, thank you. Any questions? Or
For-
you're-
Ms. Bowen?
For those of you out there, MPA stands for Master Price Agreement, and that's something that the state puts out, and they approve contractors, and they can then get jobs through that.
Any other questions or comments for Kyle? Not seeing or hearing any. Mr. Rembrandt, could you do a roll call vote to approve the award of the independent testing lab for special inspections for Pell Elementary School addition? Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
6 to approve, 1 abstention. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle, if you can hear us.
Thank you.
The next action item is 4.1. It's a request for approval of Sankofa Community Connections Research Program. Superintendent and school leaders are seeking approval to pilot this voluntary after-school program at one of our schools this fall. Dr. Kimberly O'Brien of the Rhode Island College and Ms. Nico Merritt of Sankofa Community Connections have met with the school leadership of each of our schools this past spring and the superintendent recently to discuss this project. All schools agreed they would like to participate in this research study. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented this evening? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Winslow. Superintendent Jermaine, I don't know, is
I believe Ms. Merritt is here. Yes, this program is something we'd like to pilot as an after-school program for one of our schools. And prior to Dr. Behan's leaving, this was something that was under discussion. And then Ms. Nico and Dr. O'Brien did get some backup for us and further explained to me what the project was about. So I'm recommending it move forward and we pilot at one of our schools. It's a voluntary after-school program.
already.
Dr. O'Brien, if you want to put Dr. O'Brien on the screen in case there are questions, please. And this is Dr. Kimberly O'Brien.
While we work on that, can we
All right.
continue at least while
Yes.
we're working on
Go
the
ahead.
technical aspects of that? Is there,
Are there any questions?
are there any questions from the school committee? Ms. Winslow? Ms. Winslow, go right ahead.
I was just wondering if Ms. Barrett could give us the overview of the program. I think we all had a lot of questions, but if she wants to just tell us more about it first, that might answer some of them.
Thank you. All right, so the complete title of it is not just an implicit bias program. It's a study on the impact of social devaluation on academic performance and examining robust psychosocial protective factors. So what this is we're doing a study on how people react in the situation of being the person who presents an implicit bias and the person on the receiving end of the implicit bias. And what we want to do is build relationships between the student and their teacher by having them be able to relate to each other. So we're observing the behavior, we're getting scientific data to prove it, and by the end of this program, we are hoping to come back with data that shows how far we've come along with the relationship building and letting them work together. So the first part of the program will be us working with the teachers, and then we'll have a time where they overlapped when they're working with the students. And during that time, it's going to be some type of self-care or team building exercise. I know when I was a child, when I got to see my teacher outside of school, I was so excited. I'm like, oh, they go to the same grocery store. And you see them as human, and the relationship starts to change. It's not like in school, and maybe they feel uncomfortable. So working with this program, we hope to work on relationship building and show the decrease in the stressors that come along with implicit biases and social devaluation. And so after they do their interaction, then we'll have the students work with us, and we're going to basically support them in what they need, give them the language to communicate better with teachers so that we can have just a better interaction in the school system so that they feel like they're seen and heard. And then we're giving the teachers the tools they need to negotiate with students, to relate to them better, and just relationship build. And so with the study information that we collect, we'll be able to inform other programs, other processes, and we're going to share all the information that we work on. Yep, yes, what we learn in building community. Thank you. Yes, so that other people can benefit from that, because there's not currently data that exists that couples scientific research along with lived experience. So we're doing something groundbreaking here.
Mrs. Boland?
So I have some concerns, and it's not about what you're trying to do at all. It's really about, first of all, the Newport Public Schools, or any public school, they're not about doing research. Like, research isn't one of our, tasks, really. And so when there is something to do with research, you go out and usually get a grant. And so, we're being used as a grant agency right now. And we're responsible for the ESSER money, and we have to be we have to be really good purveyors and make sure that we're handling it correctly. And I'm concerned with the budget on this. The budget, and I think in some questions I asked you earlier, first of all, we're being asked to pay to develop all of the curriculum, the questions, the testing. Now, normally when somebody would come to you with something they wanted to do, that would already have been developed, and then you would utilize it in your program. But this breaks down to, when you take the 22 people, it breaks down to $2,850 a person, or $407 every time they meet per person. And that is a lot of money. And also, I understand that when people participate in these kind of programs, you often, to incentivize them, you offer them stipends. My sons have been in asthma studies, and they were all given stipends. But this is a very lucrative stipend, and I don't know that we want to get in the habit, because what if the next group comes to us and says, we want to offer, this stipend, right, and it's rather lucrative. I don't know if you want me to say exactly what it is, but to be in this study, right? So it's going down a path that I don't know that we can continue if somebody else comes in. And then the budget just seems very costly. I understand too, though, that food does, if you offer food, it's a common, area, and it makes people feel welcome, and you sit down and eat together, and I get all that, but I'm just not sure this is ready for prime time yet. I would wish that you could go back to the drawing board and maybe redo the budget, maybe we not be responsible for all the, like the cost of all the curriculum. And so that's where I'm coming from on this. I just don't think that I'm comfortable with approving it tonight.
Okay. So may I respond? Is this the appropriate time? Okay, so I'm not sure if the whole purpose to have Dr. O'Brien present was so she can hear and help respond to the questions, and she can't hear a thing that anybody's saying. So is it okay if I put her on speakerphone so she can hear this presentation? So is it okay if I call her and have her on speakerphone?
Sure.
Because I thought that the system would work. She's saying she can't
We
hear.
can hear her now. Well, we could hear her.
Uh-oh, okay.
Really hear what the questions and concerns are. Robert, can you repeat that concern about?
I don't, is the sound better if we speak into the mic? Do they hear us then? Okay.
Okay. And in particular, pieces of the budget that are concerns?
Yeah, do you want me to go up there and talk? Okay, the concerns of that we are, going to be paying for all the research and the curriculum, the development of it, the pre, post, and in the middle testing, and that it works out to $405 per participant per session. And I'm just concerned, with those costs and setting a precedence. And those would be my main concerns.
Okay. Can you relay that for me, please?
407.
So, if you can hear me, one of the things about this type of study and research and implementation of community work is that these costs are well within most studies. And we're not talking about something that's, you're throwing money at something that's not going to work. There's nationwide diversity and implicit bias programs that do not work. There's a lot of, kind of people patting themselves on the back or checking off a checklist. These methods that we're talking about are evidence-based research that's been done for 40 years on what actually reduces implicit biases. And so for people to come into my studies, for example, it's not uncommon for them to get paid at least $75 per hour. And we're talking about a 7-week pilot. And in 7 weeks, so if you look at their data on implicit biases and discrimination and social devaluation in children, there's not much that moves those relationships. So we're talking about 7 weeks to actually create a gestalt in both the child and the educator. I've seen changes even in 2 weeks. And again, this is evidence-based. These are the only things that work to reduce social devaluation. And I'm sure as educators, you all know that the education gaps, the achievement gaps are widening for Black and brown children. They're not attenuating, they're widening. And so I think that we have to honor their time. In research, often we give an honorarium, so it's not that we're paying them to be there, but what we're saying is that we value you. And that is the underlying message of everything that we're proposing here, is not to point fingers and not to blame people, but to say, you know what, we value you thinking about yourself, thinking about how you're interacting with students, thinking about your own expectations, and also for the students to say, if you don't feel valued, we want you to be able to name what that is. And that's very powerful. And so money is, yes, it's a piece of it. And I think it's necessary, especially at a pilot level, to say that we honor these people's times. We honor it. And that's all we're doing with money. And I think it's when you look at the larger piece of social change, and also change for these students. Again, I've seen changes in 2 weeks up to 7 weeks where students start performing better because they have so much anxiety about being devalued, and then that's taking up all of their cognitive resources. And so I understand your concerns about that, but I feel like it is a matter of, saying to these people, we value your time. That's why we're budgeting that in. The other piece, I think you were talking about food, and just if I could quickly address the issue with food, is that one of the ways that children are socially devalued is that they chronically are undernourished. And again, particularly those gaps for Black and brown children,
ways that we develop these social relationships that profoundly influence children, especially where it's needed. We can do that, and we can talk about that even as a different, if we want to talk about class or nutrition as a separate part of the program. But at least this first 7 weeks, I think that you would see profound changes. And yes, there is an investment. This is what we're talking about. Fundamentally, we're talking about an investment in these children.
If you want to take it, it's up to you. Mr. Young can relay it.
So I guess I'm the one.
Okay. Thank you.
First of all, incredibly impressed with your resume, of what you've done and the studies you've done. I know down here, what I said before is I'm worried about setting a precedent for the school committee and that we would be, offering stipends to join things and, very concerned that, that we're not in that business. And up until now, we're really not in the business of doing research projects. People come to us, so they've gotten a grant, and then they want to do this research project, or also, I know important research project, it's also you want outcomes, I understand. But,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, I completely understand that you're not funding a research project. And I think Nico can speak to that we're reaching back into the community, and there are literally no programs that are thinking about actual inclusion, that are thinking about the lived experience of the students. They just don't exist. And so I think the beauty of this and the innovation of this is that Nico and I are using those multiple methods where we have the voice of the community. And yes, I'm a researcher, but my intent is not to get data points and run away and make a career for myself. My intent is to fundamentally influence social change so that those achievement gaps are decreased. And I certainly understand setting a precedent. I would also be happy to, volunteer to look at other programs that are asking me for money at some other time, because I look at diversity inclusion programs that have been historically conducted, and especially now where that is the big thing that everybody's supposed to be doing. And I can tell you that there's a lot of lost money there, and that's not what we are doing. We are not trying to waste time or money. Nico, I don't know if you want to speak to the lived experiences piece.
Yes, so when we do this work, so Dr. O'Brien and I work on a different project where we're training certified community health workers on social justice and things like that. So our approach is an empathetic approach. We try to work with people, and you should see the response from the people that participated. Some of them said it was life-changing. So that's what we try to do. We're empathetic. It's not going to be accusatory. We're not going to say, oh, you're this and that. Everybody's results are confidential, so we don't even know whose results are whose. They're assigned a number at the beginning, and Dr. O'Brien has an ethics board to report to, so that's another added layer of protection. So we are trying to do something that has not been done before, because we want different results, and we want it better for the children, and we want the teachers to have a better relationship with the children. So therefore, we would probably decrease the need for so many disciplinary actions or so many misinterpretations of things if we work on the relationship building aspect of it. So it's like an opportunity to do something different, because we've done all these evidence-based programs. I've been certified in so many, and we still are at the situation we're in now.
Ms. Boland.
I just want to add, if you came back with the revised budget, I would feel a lot more comfortable. But right now, as it is, I just, can't support a program that's going to cost us, $407 a person each time they meet, that's all.
Any other comments, concerns, questions from the school committee?
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman.
Wi-
Go ahead.
Go. Ms. Winslow, go
Just
right ahead.
Couple of logistics questions. In the proposal, it says cost for one school or the cost for 3 schools, but then it's like a certain number of students, a certain number of administrators, and then more administrators. I'm just trying to figure out what we're actually going to vote on. I don't know how many students, how many
Tonight, you're voting on
schools.
for one school, and
Okay.
we're gonna pilot it, and then we're gonna take it from there.
So it would be the one school, I think it's
The
like
62.
62,000?
Correct.
Okay. And, I mean, theoretically, I guess, if 20 administrators and teachers participate, are they able to then take what they learn and teach their colleagues? Or is this something that people would really want to go through your program start to finish to learn? Same thing for the students. Are they going to be telling their friends what they learned, or is it more, it's really sort of an individual thing where only your program, or it really should be the student or the teacher going through the program to get this training?
Right, so I'm gonna answer because it's a pilot, but my understanding of this entire process is for each individual, both student, teacher, to learn more about oneself.
A little
So-
closer, we can't hear you.
You can't, oh, wow.
I can't hear you right here, so I know nobody else can.
Okay, so my understanding of this and the way I interpreted how this program would run, this is a process that if a student or a teacher, it's an after-school program, they go through it, and it's a learning experience. It's learning more about oneself and forming relationships, and the whole, as talking with the principals and everyone that have reviewed this program, what my takeaway was, this is something in our community we are working on, that trying to improve in the culture and climate of our schools. And also, we want, our children are great, and we need them all to understand and realize that we appreciate them and we think they're great. And right now, we're building that. So I don't take it away as something I'm teaching someone. It's my thinking is if I go through this, will be, I'm going to learn more how I can be a better person and work better for my community and with our students.
But there's also the objective evidence piece too, right? So because we're taking salivary cortisol, we're capturing actual anxiety, not only in teachers, and so that's one of the superior measures of intergroup anxiety. And then we're also measuring anxiety for children when we take them through this cognitive performance battery in the beginning. And then you see that at the end. So if you know salivary cortisol, this is something that is an objective measure of devaluation, basically, or even nothing overt, but feeling uncomfortable around a student, feeling uncomfortable around somebody that might be different. And then at the same time, we're taking that measure in students as well, while we're doing a cognitive battery. And what I've seen in my research is that after there's been a relationship building, both people have decreased stress, and the kids do better on these tests. And they're very quick. They're like Weiss and Rechler, cognitive performance, speed of processing, but just in 7 weeks to see better performance, and that's associated with a decreased objective measure of cortisol. So yes, it's fundamentally, very human and very supportive, but also we want those data points. We want that objective data to say, look, everybody is de-stressed now at the end, and students are doing better academically.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if she can hear, but thank you. There's a couple more questions. I know Mr. Leary was at the same time as Ms. Winslow, so Mr. Leary.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, could you, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Could you, for the, Sally, could you, for the benefit of the press, break down who's getting what for pay?
I missed the last part.
Who's getting paid what in this program?
Oh, the stipends?
Everybody, students, you, everybody, whatever. How much like for dinner? What's the dinner cost? What's that gonna be? Is that $5 a person? $25 a person? What is that?
I don't know if we've itemized it that way. Nico, do you have a budget in front of you?
No, we didn't itemize it that way per person. We itemized it per, like, activity or the breakdown. So I'm sorry, Mr. Leary, that I know you said you had eye surgery. So would you like me to read everything to you?
I would think you want to be something to the press if you want. They need to write a story, I'm sure.
Okay. All right, so we have,
He's got it.
oh, he has it already.
You have it all?
The press at a
So
present.
what, then let me just do two questions. Are you getting paid?
Yes.
How much?
So for the total of, and I'll have to tell you everything that we're doing. So for Dr. O'Brien and I, research, development of program, doing the curriculum and planning, then program recruitment, then consultations before the program with the participants, preparation and delivery, editing, our dissemination plan and public presentation, and a weekly podcast. Then for the 7-week program, then consultations after the program with the participants, then the survey report summary presentation back out to the community, and then we are also training the program assistant. We are training the what was what is that called? It was a research assistant from Dr. O'Brien's lab, and then also training everybody in conducting all of these tests. So the total for the entire program would be $18,800.
And that's just part of the first part of the 62,000, am I correct?
Yes, we also have food for the participants, their activities that they do together, the participant stipend, the testing, and this is optional. I don't know if the educators that are participating would need childcare, but that's an option so that they're having, no barriers between them and being able to do the work. If that doesn't need to happen, we don't need to have that line in there. There's also a data and research analysis that we will have a third party come in and conduct so that they can share out the results in a fashion where everyone can understand. They can analyze the raw data, and then a celebration at the end. So I know there was concern about the food costs. We could definitely work on that. We could, if there's no child care necessary, we could take that item out. And
I think what Ms. Merritt is sharing with me, Nico's sharing with me, that if there are concerns about the food and the stipend, I believe it was the stipend.
Did you see
that-
$25 somewhere per student? Did I see some of that? $25 per student?
No, participants for the 7-week program.
Yep.
It's, and I just want to make sure I read this correctly, it's $250. Yes. For the teachers and the students, they each get a stipend of $250 for the 7 weeks.
Each gets $250?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. One last question. And that can be either one, can answer it. Who's going to determine and evaluate the research being conducted?
so we,
Question about evaluating the research of the program?
Correct. No,
Yeah, so ethically, we would need to have somebody as a consultation person, and I know quite a few people who would be a blind evaluator to assess the outcomes, so both the subjective and objective outcomes, and also the cognitive outcomes. So that's something that we have a few people in mind, a couple of my research assistants, and other people that I know, who would come in and basically assess the beginning and then all the way through the 7 weeks. Of course, that's would be after I assay the cortisol and look at the surveys and look at the cognitive performance. So we would have an independent evaluator come in and assess the outcomes.
thank you.
Sure.
I think, Ms. Boatwright, did you have some questions?
Yeah, in looking at this report that would come at the end, would it be the kind of thing that also can be reused to help to continue this program, so it would be beyond the number of participants?
Yes, absolutely. So the point of it is for us to have it as a pilot, like we said, so we can see where we need to make some adjustments or people that wanted to participate. We have interest from all 3 schools. The administrators of each school also volunteered to participate, to model to their administrators what it would look like. So we definitely have a lot of interest, and we're hoping to continue this so that we can have data from each school, and then this data that we collect and the experience that we have will benefit other organizations. So we've already approached people like the Rhode Island Kids Count and other people who look for information like this to inform their work. So it's not something that we're going to do and keep to ourselves. It's to benefit the community, actually, and the students and teachers.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is implicit bias, I think, is real. I think is real, and we need to impact all people, including myself, I will say. You know, I mean, we all need to learn from this, and so I'm trying to also figure out how it can be. Will you help us with this, the reporting, how to then spread this out through the community?
Absolutely.
Or does it have to be always done in this small environment?
No, so the pilot, again, is to inform the future work. So this is for us and for all the work that we do and all the people that are here supporting Sankofa and from Sankofa. This is our life's work. We're committed to this. We're committed to making changes that actually make a difference and impact people. We're not in this to just look good on paper. We want it to be a real lived experience, and that things are improved once we leave the space. So it's like we're in this for the long run. So it'll definitely be
Bring it out into
utilized.
the larger school
Yes, it'll be
community is your
utilized to do
goal.
that. And then who knows, the participants, when they share their experience with other people and the things that they learn. So the education that we do around this type of work, it goes way past the people that are in front of us. So they start to have conversations with family members, with friends. They start to act differently in meetings and other spaces. So they're spreading this work, kind of championing what we're doing without even realizing it, because they believe in it and they had a good experience.
Thank you.
Mr. Dring?
Mr. Mayor, I kind of want to expand on something you said. You said there was a lot of interest. So in each school, there's 11 students. So what if there's 30 students that want to do this? What is your criteria for choosing the 11 students that are going to participate?
So we have people that may be interested from the DRC group that's already established at Rogers High School, and they already do this type of thing. If we have more interest and it's overwhelming, we will make sure that we let you all know that, so we can make changes if we have to make changes. But the pilot program, they'll reach out to people, is completely voluntary. So I think I don't have a solid answer for that, because we don't know what's going to happen with this yet. But if we get more, we will accommodate them so that they can participate at another time. The goal is to let this go as far as it can, so that it can impact everybody in a positive way, as many people as we can help.
The other question I had is, it talks about the testing, and it says the testing is considered to be 100% accurate.
Yes.
How do you, can you expand on that? I mean, that's 100%.
Yeah,
is-
that would be Dr. O'Brien's expertise.
Oh, yeah, well, so the idea about neuroscientific evidence or objective evidence like that is that people cannot control their cortisol. Basically, you can't control your heart rate to any extent, you can't control your sweat glands. And so when we look at bias, for example, or social evaluation, or just even discomfort, people are not that great at controlling those physiological responses. We're great at controlling our faces and our body language. So basically that means that if I put two people together and one of those people is uncomfortable or feels awkward or anxious about interacting with that person, we're going to see it in their cortisol. And so that's what I mean. It's 100% accurate, because over the years of me doing this research, inevitably people will say in the survey, in a self-presentation way, I believe in diversity, I'm all in, I believe in inclusion, I have no problem with anybody that's different from me. But when you put them into an interaction, and even a collaborative interaction that is low risk, those people who say that they feel comfortable, they have a cortisol response. And to have a cortisol response is not, I know we're all stressed, right? But to have an HPA, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, salivary cortisol response means that you feel socially threatened, right? So you feel so anxious that you feel like yourself, you're almost that your life is being threatened. So it takes quite a bit to mount that response. And again, reliably in intergroup interactions, you will see cortisol responses uncoupled from how people are subjectively rating their experiences. And that's what I mean by 100% accurate. So we can look at surveys, and we will ask people, these surveys that are kind of subtle, but in the end, we're going to look at the cortisol that is usually, in my experience, very high for everybody in the beginning, and the more that people exchange these lived experiences and develop relationships and trust and naming these things together, you do see decreases in cortisol, so that they almost were just in baseline, basically, the first measure that they take at the beginning of the study.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Flowers.
Thank you. I think there's some important words here that really we should all keep in mind. We always say that Newport is quite a diverse community on many different levels, and that is indeed one of our strengths. And we talk about a lot of this, the diversity among our students, and this is probably one of the good opportunities to, I guess we can say, put our money where our mouth is. And we also, the expression here of implicit bias. And I think in understanding that implicit is the opposite of explicit. Most people with common sense are not going to show an explicit bias in their everyday lives. Some people do. We watch the news, we know that. But for any of us to say, oh, I don't have any biases, I don't have any prejudices, we might be fooling ourselves. For people who don't know, and I see a former student sitting out there, I've taught in the Newport schools for 30 years. Been out for 26 now, so you can figure that I have some experience in this. And yes, did I see biases among some of my colleagues? Sure. Some of it was not too implicit either. Not too many, fortunately. And even among students, it was a constant effort to try to get the young people to be not only proud of their own heritage, but also more aware and more understanding and more accepting of everyone else's heritages and ethnicity and so forth. With that, and as we're talking here about the young people in these kinds of experiences that we're hearing about tonight, that their academic levels will, I'm going to say hopefully, but apparently it's been demonstrated, will increase. I've always said, and people probably get tired of hearing it, that if you expect just a mediocre level of achievement from every single student that we're looking at, you're lucky if you're going to get that. You have to keep reaching that highest level, and you try to keep challenging and challenging. Is it going to be tough for some people? Sure, we all know that. We experienced it ourselves. But looking at the detailed research-based project that this seems to me it's a great opportunity, especially when we have our teachers saying, yeah, we want to take part in this. And that should tell all of us sitting here that this is an important activity, an important opportunity, really, to take part in this. So I certainly hope we can make this a success and another achievement for our Newport Public Schools. And just want to thank the people here who have brought it to our attention so that we can see what is hopefully is going to be going on. Thank you.
Ms. Winslow?
Thank you so much for saying that, because we actually have many citations that show teacher expectations, exactly what you just said. You know, and students are so sensitive, as you know, to students' expectations, and they will rise to the occasion or they will not. So that was really beautiful. Thank you.
Trying to remember my question. Sorry. Oh, earlier in the year, I think so it was last school year, you had a healing circle. You had curriculum that you had approved through RIDE for the healing circle. Is any of that sort of model in this program? Or is that really different?
So part of the interaction between the student and teacher, that's going to be like self-care, healing circle type things where they're interacting on a personal level and getting to relate to each other. The healing circle was a success. We had like a lot of excited students to participate, and their parents contacted me because they were excited. And relationship building is like at the core of almost every single thing I do with the community because it's so important. We can take down some of the barriers if we can relate on a human level. People advocate for each other better when they feel like I understand this person or I'm connected in a personal way. So that's what we're trying to do. And I wanted to make sure really quickly that we understand implicit bias and what social devaluation is. So it's basically a teacher having a lower expectation of a certain group of people. And so that student will definitely feel that. I don't think people realize the negative impacts of a teacher's having lower expectations. And maybe they don't mean harm or anything. Maybe they say, oh, this student may not be able to do this because they have a hard life at home. What they're not realizing is that lower expectation, that student is going to meet that, and then that data goes into the achievement gap. Oh, see, they can't perform because of this. So it's like a cycle. So we're trying to disrupt the cycle and fill it in with some protective factors, which is what a lot of organizations say that we need for our students in order for them to thrive in the school system. So that's what we're doing. So it's like educating and growing together.
Ms. Winslow's not done yet, so
Just,
she is.
I guess the comment, I think in terms of the budget, I actually think it's a deal. Earlier tonight, we approved the student engagement facilitators, I think on a hope and a prayer that they're going to make a difference, even though all of the C-Tree initiatives have had mediocre success at best. You know, last meeting, we gave $100,000 to a couple of different groups, you know, with basically a paragraph written up and a recommendation from Dr. Bean. Tonight we've got lots and lots of detail, maybe more than we ever expected. We give teachers stipends to stand around at lunch and bus, and I mean, we pay them for everything, so I don't think this really breaks the precedent. We gave O'Day Engineers $20,000 to inspect the auditorium earlier in the year, and right now we're paying two professionals less than that to conduct a program. So, yeah, we hundreds of thousands of dollars on curriculum that still we just don't see change. So I'm willing to do the $62,000 to try something new. Very willing.
Mrs. Boland, you wanted to?
I want to go on record as saying I really believe that this, you know, we got incredible people that would be working on this project, but it's the budget for me, and I just don't want to set the precedence of these large stipends, and so I would just like them to come back with a more modified budget, but so for tonight I won't be able to vote in favor of it.
Ms. Boatright?
Right, I'm going to say because it's a pilot, and I don't think we do very many pilots like this, and because it is an area where we in Newport have had a lot of struggles trying to make change, and I know from many things that have been brought forth to us over the last year and a half that there is a lot of implicit bias. So I will be supporting this. I think that the group can work together on some of the things we discussed already to, you know, make sure that they are reasonable and all that kind of stuff. But I will be supporting this. Thank you.
So, I think based on the comments, I don't see any questions. I do want to open up to the public because I have been told there are people here who would like to speak. We normally do a sign up. It's a little off tonight, the way we do it. But anybody that would like to speak, I'll call on you. You can come up, speak. The rule is you have 3 minutes to present. You need to step up to the microphone and give your name and address for the record. So I've been told there are people who wanted to speak, so if you want to just raise your hand, I'll point to you or say, okay, go right ahead. Yep, just step up to the microphone, identify yourself for the record.
Sean Higgins, 20 Cary Street, and I guess I just have a question for the doctor. I think it's a great program. The stipends don't bother me. You got to do research to research. My question to the doctor is, who owns the curriculum after you develop it? Does it go back to the Newport school system so they can use it, or is it going to be used somewhere else? That's my only question. If we're going to invest in a pilot, is there some ownership in Newport? That's all. Thanks.
That's an excellent question. I mean, right now, I think we're thinking about developing this as a training manual, so eventually taking it nationally. But of course, the priority would be to leave it at Newport, of course, and to extend it to more teachers and more students. This is, you know, kind of the ground zero where we're committed. But I think, as Nico said, there's a lot of interest in the program, and in terms of just actual social change, which is so critical right now, we would probably turn it into something national, as something that's effective in reducing, potentially eradicating implicit biases, and social evaluation for these students. You know, I think it is something that is embedded in our society, and so we don't want to keep it at one location. But I would certainly say we would expand it in Newport and Rhode Island for sure. Nico, do you agree with that? I don't know if we've really talked about kind of, you know, the larger vision in detail, but do you agree with that?
Yes. Yes, so of course Newport is a priority. We've had other school systems approach us because they're interested in this as well. So we're hoping in Rhode Island, so like a person that's on our committee for the Trust and Equity Alliance, she's now a teacher in Providence. And so she said the Providence Met would be interested in something like this. So we thought that's great because we can compare data and we can show what changes happen where and where we could be more effective or what changes that we can make. So again, this is, as Dr. O'Brien said, ground zero, and this is a pilot, and this will inform future work and future projects. And of course, Newport is where we are. That's where our heart is. So of course, we're not gonna like leave Newport or say, oh, thanks for the info, gotta go, we're going to the next place. It's gonna stay here, and we're gonna keep building off of that to help impact change for everyone.
Mr. Higgins, just, we can hear you, but the microphone is what gets recorded. Sorry, just for, if you can.
Oh, yeah, we're not.
Well,
and my concern is that, and I don't doubt that, you know, you're for Newport, and for any program to go national is great. My question as a parent is we are the pilot.
Yes.
Right? And I'm just going down to money. If we're going to invest $60,000 into a pilot that turns into a national program, what does the Newport School District get out of that? Does that mean that if we expand to this school, you know, it's going to cost us $120,000 once the curriculum's out? That's why I asked the ownership of the curriculum, and how that gets into it.
So my hope would be that we would teach teachers how to do this. So you take up the reins, and then when you have new teachers or teachers that are coming in who haven't had this training, maybe this becomes part of professional development. And maybe you don't have the cortisol, or we could discuss that if you wanted those objective measures still. But the basics of the program, in my thinking, would be left here. And I don't know if this was established, but you know, this is confidential data. So, everybody is assigned a subject ID that's protected, their identity is protected. Even in anything that we disseminate, we don't necessarily say that this is Newport. I don't know if that was part of your concern. But I don't know, did I answer that question though?
Hold on, you have to one at a time and then,
Yeah, and it's not the monetization.
No,
I just
it's-
feel that if we as a school district are going to fund this research and this curriculum that I keep hearing, what is the ROI back to Newport for this curriculum, especially if it goes national, if it's a great program? But is there ownership in the Newport, Rhode Island school system to have the curriculum here?
My understanding is we're able to keep it and we can continue to run it. We can also seek Dr. O'Brien and Ms. Merritt for any advice or anything in the future. My understanding is that we keep it.
So I'm sorry, I wasn't understanding your question. I didn't know if you meant like, once we do the project here, we can't take it anywhere else. We're not leaving Newport at all unless we're asked to leave. Yes, you will, Newport will benefit from it, and the experience hopefully will spread throughout the schools, and our students here will be able to have a better school experience, and the teachers will be able to relate better to the students. So it's for here. Sorry, I misunderstood.
no, can I just do any other public comment? I'll give you all the time you want to speak, trust me. Any other public comment? I'm just checking because I was told there was public comment, that's why I'm checking. If that's fine, if no, gentleman in the back? Sure.
Good evening, Dr. O'Brien. Thank you. I just have a question.
You just need to identify yourself
sorry,
and your
yes.
address for the record,
Yeah,
please.
no,
That's
I'm
it.
sorry.
Thank you.
I'm Bar Flynn. I live at 1 Beacon Court, about a block away. I just have a comment because I'm a little unclear on what the actual metric is regarding the success of the program. I've heard about the cortisol, and it might be me, but also I heard about a reduction in the achievement gap. So ultimately, is it going to be an objective assessment of the type of criteria that are used by, say, the rankings by the NEA or U.S. News and World Report, math and reading? Ultimately, improvements in math and reading are to be expected, or is it more subjective and, I just feel better about myself and my relationship to my teachers, but it's not reflected in any actual objective improvement in learning?
Right, that's a great question. So the initial assessment of students' performance is not going to be according to national standards. It's just going to be because we have 11 students in the pilot and 11 teachers in the pilot. Obviously, that doesn't generalize to the population. But our initial assessment is using components of WACE and Wechsler. So we're going to look at student processing. We're going to look at cognitive interruption due to stress, right? So that's a big issue for children of color. We're going to look at delayed memory recall. So actually immediate and delayed memory recall. We're going to look at digit span, so how many digits they can recall. And we're going to do that at the beginning. And the idea is to provide evidence that after the feeling of chronic devaluation is decreased through these other methods that are more social psychology, social psychophysiology, that the child's mind is going to not be ruminating, not be reevaluating these events, these negative events that happen to them, trying to figure out what happened to them, but their cognitive performance, at least in those metrics, will in 7 weeks improve. And I've seen that. And I think once we have pilot objective data, we're looking at literature funds that are interested in this kind of work, we're looking at national standards, and at probably years down the road, we will have to look at what are the standards, like national standards, and then and assess at that level. Initially, all we're trying to say is let's get to the subterraneous chronic social evaluation in students, and let's open up teachers' lives a bit, and again take some objective indicators and cognitive indicators, and in 7 weeks say, look, this improved. Everybody has decreased stress. There's cognitive so eventually, of course, the goal is to look at national standards. But, you know, we're starting here where our hearts are, as Nico said. And again, I think it's profound to think about any student performing better in 7 weeks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure, I'll go, yep. And just identify yourself and your address for the record, please.
My name is Amy Machado. I live at 12 Burdick Ave in Newport. So I wrote a couple things. I'm just going to read it. Systemically, we know that black people compared to whites are more likely to attend schools with less funding per student, less likely to attain a job because of a black-sounding name, or even when trying to attend an Ivy League university. Less likely to obtain a home loan, even when having the same credit score, have their homes appraised for equitable value, more likely to experience pregnancy complications and maternal mortality, and more likely to have contact with police and criminal justice system. And knowing that that is true, I can't believe that it doesn't, these biases don't also affect our children in our public schools. I believe that when people tell you something is true about their lived experiences, we should believe them. And I believe that when our black and brown students are telling us that they experience or they even feel some type of bias, I believe them. I'm just a white lady from South Carolina, but I believe people when they tell me the truth. And I appreciate Nico and your colleague here for bringing this pilot program to Newport. I would implore all of you on the school committee to please vote yes and to let's start this journey together. I think it's going to be amazing for our black children of Newport. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Katie Villa, 92 Bliss Road. I think identifying implicit bias is something every person, but especially every teacher, could benefit from. But I worry that teachers who might stand to benefit perhaps more than others might not willingly volunteer for this. Could you speak a little bit more about how you're going to choose the educators that are going to be in this?
So since this program is voluntary, and we're checking how this pilot goes, we're hoping to invite more teachers to participate by word of mouth from people who went through the experience, by them seeing their administrators also participating. We're hoping to bring everyone into the loop with this so that we can make an impact. So we do realize with the amount that we have, it's just a pilot right now. So it's going to grow, and we'll be able to get buy-in from more participants once they've seen it happen. Because, you know, like some people are, oh, am I going to be called a racist type thing? And we want to show them that it's nothing like that. So we're hoping the shared experiences and good experience that people have, and they see a difference being made, that they'll kind of turn into champions for this project as well and support us going further.
Is there any opportunity for students to anonymously nominate or invite teachers who they think might stand to benefit more than others?
I think that's a really good idea, and that we would definitely look into that for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Also, can I just chime in and just to say also, you know, I think one of the benefits of this program is that people might feel a little intimidated at first, but what happens is that there's a completely different quality of life when people go through something like this, because we're very supportive, we're praise oriented, and we believe in validating people's experiences, everybody's experiences, and so it's actually quite a positive experience. And so, in my experience, educators are the most passionate people I've ever met, and if they can do something for their students, they will do it. And if that means challenging themselves a little bit, they will do it. So I think part of our recruitment is also to tap into that passion that educators have.
Thank you. I believe we have one last person who wanted to speak. Nobody can hear you unless you're over there, sorry. Rogers would be the pilot. The question was, where would the pilot be? And it is Rogers.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Angela McCalla. I live at 203 Hillside Avenue. I'd like to first thank Nico Merritt for standing up here, because from my perspective, as I'm watching, I've watched both you and the doctor also as we're sitting here mitigating, asking about investments and returns, and asking more questions, and not even questioning the fact that you all approved 3 positions for $85,000 and more to come. This is a change agent, and what we're asking for is for you all to support our community, okay? If we are all one Newport, I loved the concept about thinking about, the definition of insanity is doing the same things, and you have an opportunity to be able to invest in what looks like, from my perspective, a very small amount to have some type of change happen. And as elected officials and my representatives, I hope that this committee will do the right thing.
Thank you. Mrs. Boland.
All right. I never come into a meeting having made up my mind, so I will say that I'm gonna actually vote in favor of this tonight, because I've been convinced by Nico and by the doctor at hand. I really read her resume carefully, and it's pretty outstanding. That, I just know we can't sustain this. We're gonna have to, if we run it again, we're gonna have to really look at, how we do this, because paying a 5-year-old $250 to be part of this, we're gonna have to look at that. And I also want to make sure too that and I think you're gonna get lots of kids that are gonna want to do this. So one is, we got to make sure they show up, and two, it's gonna have to be like some kind of lottery, I think. I just don't, let's not handpick the kids that are in this, but can we, if we have more than what sign up, can we be some kind of lottery?
I just want to say I want to meet the 5-year-old that's at Rogers.
You're talking about doing it again.
I'm just saying, I want to meet that 5-year-old from Rogers. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Drink.
This 7-week project, just a little closer. When is it supposed to start?
So we don't have a set date. We had to know if we can do the project, first of all. And then if we get approval, then we're going to give ourselves 3 weeks to recruit people to participate. And that may take some background work. So I think at the latest, it'll be in the spring. So I guess anytime, if it's approved between then and the spring, we would start. But it will be within the school year, for sure.
I do agree with Becky, and I do hope that if this continues, that you can fine-tune it a little bit. I do believe this is expensive, and I'm reluctant to support it, but I will. I've been convinced as well, and I will support it tonight.
Any other questions or comments? I don't believe there are any. I don't see any. So, Mr. Rembrandt, I would ask for a roll call vote to approve the request for the Sankofa Community Connections Research Program this evening. Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
Thank you. So six approvals and 1 abstention, correct? Thank you. Nay. I'm sorry, nay. Thank you. Thank you all for your presentation and your time. The next item is 5. Next section is section 5 on the agenda, which leads us to the school building committee update. Thank you, Dr. O'Brien. You're all set.
So they're sitting in the Zoom meeting, they said, both Kyle and Mark.
Thank you for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're going to try to continue with the technology here and get the school building committee update.
Yeah, it should be the Newport Van Buren presentation update, 052521.
No, we haven't.
Okay, are we all set? Good to go?
Yeah, we're just gonna, we took a sort of informal recess while you got together, so just give us a minute to get everybody back, and we thought you'd be a little while longer. We'll just wait, Mr. Dring will be right back. We all set? Good. Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready, we're all set. Go right ahead. Go any way you want. It's in the program. It's whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm just gonna do a very brief update on Pell. I'll let you guys know the rebar and the forms for the foundation. Footings and walls are in progress. That will continue through this week and next week. And then looking ahead, the steel is tracking to be on site starting in mid-October. So that is a quick update on Pell. And for Rogers, our 60% schematic design estimate is in progress. And that will continue through this month with reconciliation at the end of the month as well. And without further ado, we'll let Mark Rose from SLAM give you guys a quick presentation on what the design is looking like these days. So Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a presentation. First of all, I'm Mark Rhodes, design principal with SLAM. I'll try to keep this presentation brief. I know you all have had a long night already. This is the presentation we gave to the Van Buren Charitable Trust a few weeks ago as we're looking to help the district partner with them and bridge the gaps that we see potentially in funding. What we did is we presented the project and where we are to date. We have this slide here, which is really about the goals and objectives of the project. This is what we've worked with the community and the district, talking to students, talking to teachers and administrators, the things that are important to the project along the important chart to the right, far right, that we know that we historically see percentages within each of these categories, and the structure would be typically 11 to 13%. One of the problems we're having right now is because of all the steel that Amazon is buying across the country, they're driving steel structure prices up pretty markedly. We think that's a short-term duration. It has a life cycle, but it is an impact in the marketplace right now. HVAC and controls, a lot of you probably
certainly take that.
Let me see. Any questions from any of the committee members?
No, thank you.
I don't believe so. Robert, if you want to relay it. There are no questions.
Okay. Okay.
Just a thank you.
So, I think
Thank
we're good.
you. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
So that'll lead us, that's the presentation. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, number 6. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented this evening? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Winslow. Any questions or concerns on the consent agenda? Not seeing or hearing any. Mr. Rembrandts, could you do a roll call vote to approve the consent agenda as presented this evening? Aye.
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 Six approvals and 1 absence. The next, that leads us into the next section. Number 7 is correspondence. The monthly correspondence, we have the school building committee notes as usual. Their update, the minutes of their meetings. Is there a motion to accept the the correspondence as presented? Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Boland. Any questions on any of the correspondence? Hearing none, Mr. Rembrandts, you do a roll call vote to approve accepting the correspondence as presented. Aye.
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 Thank you. The next section is 8, reports from superintendent and staff. Is there a motion to accept the reports from the superintendent and staff as presented this evening? Ms. Boatright, seconded by Dr. Flowers. And the first expenditure and revenue report, the first is 8.1 expenditure and revenue report. And I believe Mr. Gonzalez has joined us at the end of the table. If there are any questions for him, down there, down in the hot seat.
Good evening.
Any questions on the expenditure and revenue reports? Ms. Boland, I'm glad somebody's asking
Yeah.
Mr. Gonzalez for one because he sat here for 3 hours.
Well, that's exactly why I'm asking. So, I mean, legally, can we eventually have him participate remotely?
Yes.
So, okay, because some nights there are no questions and some nights we really need them. So, it just, you know, it's a long time. He's always at the end of the the end of the night. So, okay, that was my question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Winslow?
I was curious. I don't know if the
A little
finance.
louder.
Oh, sorry, guys. There's a fund balance. There's ESSER 2 money coming in. Next year there will be ESSER 3 money. I don't know if you could. I think last month we had a little bit of a cheat sheet that was provided. I guess like the high level Cliff notes of kind of like, I don't know where we are with the ESSER money, what we've spent, what we still expect to have. Even though it's just these big blocks of money, I still have a hard time kind of figuring out where everything is. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if it's something that's easy to just sum up in a couple of points and we sort of just see it month over month going forward. But we could talk about it later.
If I can share that we have applied for $3 million of the ESSER 2 monies. The ESSER 3 money application is not yet available. Sometime in the middle of October, RIDE anticipates making that award available to us. The fund balance itself resides in somewhat of a restricted account right now that our prior fiscal year is over. So it's, let's call it a savings account. It's sitting in the savings account that is not part of our current operating budget. And to use any of those funds, there would have to be a request and approval by the board to have access to. So they're just sitting in the savings account.
Okay. That was great. Thank you.
Ms. Boatright.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a shout out, as we would say, to the fact that we do have a very large surplus at this point in time that has stemmed from some hard work from our finance director for getting, really found some savings in the transportation, working with Candace. We talked about that before, I know, but also just really trying to take advantage of some of the programs and really tighten up our reporting of our budget. So I just wanted to thank him and say that that's really something that we should all be very happy to have, that buffer, because we've never had a buffer like this. Some of it is ESSER oriented and CARES oriented, and the fact that we were running not a full operation for the last couple of years, so there's lots of reasons for that, which I want to be clear about, but he's done a very good job, and I want to thank him.
Ms. Boland.
I will also comment that the money now is not ESSER money. So now it's in our fund balance, and it can be, and we, as a school committee, I would hope have every intention of using it to improve the outcomes for students. But the fact now that we didn't have to spend it under a certain time limit and with certain restrictions is really something to your credit. Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, if I can make one last comment, which we just learned today as an example of...
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I was trying to speed it up, Grace, sorry. But we learned today that some new books are arriving at teachers' desks and in classrooms, and that haven't been replaced in like 30 years. So it's very nice to have some extra funds to be able to update some of these books and some of these things, which I hope at some point we can report out on a little bit more concisely. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments for the expenditure and revenue report?
He's already left, so.
He could read the room well, so he did a nice job. 8.2 is the Newport Schools Restricted Grants Report. Any questions on that? No. Okay. 8.3, Enrollment Demographics and Homeless Reports.
We are, I think, we're right about where we left off at the end of last year. Correct. Right? Okay. Just nothing unusual to report, I guess.
8.4, Superintendent's Update on Partnerships, Collaborations, and Personnel. Any questions on anything Superintendent would like to add?
I just want to bring to everyone's attention, we have a new partnership with Salve Regina University. As a matter of fact, we're meeting this Thursday evening for our second meeting this year. And Sale Newport will be working with our middle school students, so we're very happy about that.
Ms. Winslow.
Could you speak a little bit to the tutoring that's going to happen at the schools this year? Because that's, right, a big push for the ESSER funding.
Correct. Right,
just how do we catch up, assuming there's been learning loss, and so I see these positions for, sorry I lost the titles, but if you could go over what you're doing with these positions and how that program's going to work.
Mr. Vance and Mr. Monahan have been looking at student achievement, working with Ms. Falcarelli, and they've actually started to funnel students into tutoring sessions to help improve achievement. Teachers have come forward and volunteered and stepped up to work on these programs, in these programs during the school day with the in-school tutoring for a stipend. And then we also have a Saturday academy that's going to be beginning very soon. And we have transportation that we'll be providing to pick up the students with our vans to bring them for those that need transportation. So that's just kind of over a big highlight. Over at the middle school, Mr. Barrios and Mr. Folcarat are still working and mapping out their plan with Ms. Rafa at the middle school. So those are the highlights of those programs.
Ms. Boatright.
So one of the reasons why we were doing in-school tutoring was because they were there already. So to do it on a Saturday, do we think that there's going to really be participation?
We do think there's going to be some participation, and we want to make sure parents and the students know these opportunities are there. With a new athletic director, we're also working with the athletic director to see if we can push forward the importance of being an athlete scholar. So that is something Mr. Vance and I have been discussing. The in-school tutoring research does show during the school day is more effective with the students. So we'll also be having that as well. So we're fortunate with the ESSER funding. We have a lot of initiatives we can put forward, things we've never been able to do.
Ms. Bowen.
Just for a point here, we looked into this many years ago, and the direction from Riot is if you provide the transportation, you can actually make Saturday school mandatory.
I did not know that.
Well, and as long as that hasn't changed, but we did look into it.
Okay.
And so, I mean, that might be something to hang over, some kids need things hung over their heads.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Winslow.
Is the tutoring going to be voluntary? Will the student have to sign up,
The student
or
is
will
being
they
encouraged with
strongly
the discussion
encouraged?
revolving around one's grades and the data that we're seeing, so that we
Okay.
can keep students on track to graduate on time.
And when is it, like, how does it work with their schedule? Maybe the principals need to tell me that, but is there a study hall for everybody, and that's when they would do it, or do
Correct.
they pull out of their normal class? Okay.
Correct. They have a learning center, but they have, I know Mr. Monahan, Mr. Vance have been talking with teachers specifically about specific students, and they are trying, for instance, if it's math, they're noticing a group of students needed support. They're trying to make sure there's a math teacher available during that time.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Anybody awake over here? You want to say anything before? All right. Go right ahead.
I think they're ready to go home.
I know, okay, the last thing I swear tonight, but,
Just check.
yeah. But have you thought about, like, assigning those kids to those rooms? The choice thing is a little bit, so in other words, if there's a teacher available and it's a math and he has math problems, he goes to that particular classroom.
That may be happening, but I don't want to state it is, and I'm not sure. I will look into that. I will not be surprised if it is, but I don't want to state it if it's not. So I will double check.
Go right ahead. You got 12 minutes. Keep talking.
I'm gonna repeat something I repeat a lot. I just hope that if there are positive results that we can share from the tutoring and the in-school tutoring, that they are brought back to the committee and to the community, because this is, like they've always said, this is the best way to reach students. So if we can prove it's reaching students, this is one of the things we want to continue, use the ESSER 3 funding for, whatever it might be.
And Director Ashley, who I did say he could leave, he will be the one that will be tracking that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure. Yeah. You just Bob. I know you just step. It's just a technicality, but the only way the camera and the video picks it up is the audio picks it up as if you're at the microphone. So sorry to stretch your legs.
Audience participation.
Just a quick question for the superintendent. How does one get involved as a tutor with the student athlete? How would one get involved? Did I understand the dialogue correctly? That one of the objectives would be to tutor student athletes or to encourage an athlete to have a student mindset and to use a tutor toward that end? Did I hear that correctly or
No,
not?
what I was referring to with the new AD, Ms. Shavs, was trying to encourage our athletes that they're students first, athletes second, and the importance of scholarship with the athletes. So go tend to your studies first, and then the athletics. So that's something a culture we want to try to build with our athletes, knowing that.
Okay, would tutoring be part of that
Yes.
paradigm?
Absolutely, yes. And is your question, how does one become?
How does one, yes, how would one
outside
invest?
the school?
Actually, it really wouldn't matter in terms of my interest. I have some experience in that area, and I was curious as I would like to investigate the opportunity to tutor athletes who may need help in a particular subject.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can make Principal Vance aware of that. And
Okay.
if you want to
I
send
could
me or
contact him myself if you-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be
Good.
great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the superintendent on the reports on partnerships, collaborations, and personnel? Seeing none, Mr. Rembrandt, will you do a roll call vote to approve the reports as presented? Acceptance of the reports as presented. Aye.
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 Thank you. Six approvals, 1 absence. That moves us into suggested meeting dates and agenda items. We have September 22nd, there's a policy subcommittee meeting, 5:30 at Pell Elementary School Library. September 27th, there's a school building committee at 5:30 at Pell Elementary School Library. Anything I've forgotten or that was added after my list? I don't believe so. So that's it on meeting dates. There is no executive session this evening. So the next order of business is a motion to adjourn the meeting. Ms. Winslow, seconded by Dr. Flowers. Simple voice vote. All those in favor to adjourn the meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.